Hi student, good evening. Today is 7th Geography, 7th Standard Geography. The second lesson, landform. Landform. What's the meaning by landform? A natural feature of the earth surface. That is meaning by landform. So the earth has an infinity variety of the landform in the earth surface. The earth has a infinity variety. The earth has an infinity variety landform in the earth surface. Then, which names the variety of the earth name is mountain, plateau, plains, valley, and etc. Next, some part of the lithosphere rugged and some flat. So lithosphere. Some part of the lithosphere rough, rugged and some flat. So the earth has a rough and some flat. Next, the lithosphere has a result have two main process. So two process. The first one is endogenic. So first one endogenic and the second process exogenic. So endogenic is nothing but it's an internal process. Endogenic is an internal process. So exogenic is an external process. So two main process, endogenic and exogenic. Endogenic means internal process. Exogenic is endogenic is an internal process. Internal process upliftment and sinking. Sink. It's inside the earth, inside the process being to the inside the earth. Next, external process is nothing but it's outside, it's the upper part of the earth. It's the external meanings and continuous wearing down and rebuilding. Down and rebuilding. So in two process, endogenic and exogenic. Endogenic means internal process, exogenic means external process. And next is gradation. So gradation is nothing but gradation is a process leveling the highland through erosion and upliftment. Next, filling up the lowland through deposition. So gradation is the process leveling the highland through the erosion and filling up the lowland through the deposition. Is a landforms. First one is land. The earth is some variety of the place in the earth surface, and there are names mountains, plateau, plains, valleys, and etc. And lithosphere, the place of the rugged and some flat. That landforms has two main results. First one endogenic, next one exogenic. So endogenic means internal process, exogenic external process. This is graduation. Gradation means leveling the highland and the highland through the erosion and filling up the lowland through the depositions. And next landform. So the landform is continuous and varying away to the two process. So first one is weathering and erosion. Weathering or erosion. So weathering is nothing but, so weathering is change the appearance. Weathering means the two landforms, two process. First one weathering, erosion. Weathering is a change to the appearance and describe the breaking downs. Describes the breaking down. Describes the breaking downs means the rocks and the sunlight and heat the rocks and broke into the small pieces. That is a weathering. Erosion is the geological process. So erosion, geological process, and the materials and some rocks and transport the natural forces carried by the wind and water. This is the erosion. So next soil erosion. Next river. So river is nothing but running water is called river. River means running. So running water is called river. Next, the water flowing the river is called source. The water flowing from its source. Next, that generally the river originates from the mountains or hills. The river origin. So river origins mountains or hills. Next is source. So what is meant by source? The source is nothing but the river, the place of the river origin, that is means source. The place of river origin is called source. The next is the river mouth. So river mouth, the place where joined to the sea or ocean. It's a place called river mouth. The river and enter the sea and oceans. The place called river mouth. The place where joined sea or ocean. So called is a river mouth. Next is the first river origin to the mountains and hills. The river mouth, what is mean by river mouth? The entire sea and the ocean, that is called river mouth. V-shaped valley. So the valley look like a V-shaped. So what is mean by valley? So it's nothing but the lowland between two mountains. So two mountains is a lowland. It's called V-shaped valley. Then the V-shaped valley used the running water through this way. So the river and running flow into the valleys. So V-shaped valleys. The running water erode. The running water erode the mountain track. The steep-sided. The valleys look like the letter of V. So it's called V-shaped valley. The V-shaped valley is nothing but the running water erode the mountain track and steep-sided. So look like a V-shape. It's called V-shaped valley. Next, waterfall. So waterfall is meaning is and falling the water. So meaning is falling the water is called waterfall. A water and fall down into the cliff or rocks, that is called waterfall. A water fall down. A water fall down from cliff or rocks. Is called waterfall. And the waterfall and erode the soft rocks. The waterfall erode the soft rock by erosion. The waterfall removed the soft rock by erosion. So best example for the waterfalls, the Kutralam. So Kuttalam is the river is Sittar. So Sittar river. So Kuttalam is the main falls in the South Indian. So what's the meaning by waterfall? So water fall down from the cliff or rocks and removed by the soft rock by the erosion. So example for Kuttalam in the Sittar river. Next, plunge pool. The plunge pool is nothing but plunge pool is found in the bottom of the river. The plunge pool found in the bottom. So bottom of the waterfall. The plunge pool found in the bottom of waterfall. It's formed by the erosion. And then you just example for the plunge pool, you take one jug of the water and pour the ground. So you just look at the place and the water make one hollow. So same way, the large amount of the water fall into the waterfalls. At the bottom of the waterfalls it make a plunge pool. That means a plunge pool. And next, alluvial fans. So alluvial fans are footgills, nothing but the sediment of the deposit. When the river enter the plains, the sediment of the deposit means clay and silt. So sediment. The sediment of the deposits, the clay or silt, and when the river enter the plains, that's the meaning of alluvial fan. Next, meander. So meander is nothing but meander means to have a lot of curves and bend. So to have a lot of the curves and the bends means the meander. The river enter the plains. When the river enter the plains, and the river make a twist and the turns. The twist and the turns is called, and it have a large bend means the meander. So you just look at the picture. So river and enter the plains It means a meander. It's called meander. The river enter the plains, have curves and the bends, a lot of the turning. It means a meander. And the example, and the Velar Setiathop in Kadalur. So Velar Setiathop in Kadalur. Next, Oxbow Lake, which is nothing but a lake formed when the meandering river cut off the main stream. Cut off the main stream. It's a meander. This is a main stream. So at the place, and erosion and deposition along the side of meander. Along the side of meander means this side. So erosion and deposition. So the river cut and joined this way. The river cut and this way. So this place look like a oxbow lake. Oxbow. So it's called Oxbow Lake. Erosion and depositions along the side of a meander. Along the side of the meander, and the shape of the resemble of the Oxbow Lake. Next, the river overflows the banks. The river overflows the banks and flooding and deposit and fine soil and the sediment. The deposit fine soil and the sediment. This leads to the formation that the flat, fertile and floodplain. That is means flat, fertile and floodplain. And raise the banks. This raise the banks is called levees. The raised banks are called distributaries. Is nothing but a river does not return to the mainstream after leaving it. So it's a river, and the river and enter the sea or oceans. So at the place and have make a lot of rivers, the distributaries. So these rivers not return to the main streams. So how to form the distributaries? The river approach the sea or ocean. So the river approach means and nearby. So approach the sea or the oceans. The speed of the water is decreases. The speed of the water decreases. So at the times the river break up into the number of branches. The break of the number of branches. It's called distributaries. The river approach the sea or ocean. So at the times the speed of the waters decreases. So now the river break up into the number of branches. That's called distributaries. Next, delta. So delta is nothing but the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. The fourth letter of Greek is the like of the delta. The fourth letter of Greek alphabet. A triangular tract of the sediment or deposit of the mouth of the river. So mouth of river. A triangular tract of the sediment deposit of the mouth of the river. That's called a delta. So river is a Greek alphabet. So fourth Greek alphabet is the delta. The velocity of the water very slow. The velocity of the water very slow. So the water deposit the beings loads in the places. The deposit is so very slow, and the water carried away the salt, minerals and dust, clay and silt and some things. So the water is a very slow, velocity is a very slow. So the water deposit the loads from these places called delta. So the collection of the sediment from all the mouth from the delta. So all collection. So collection of the sediment. The sediment means clay and silt, sand. These lakes are sediment into the delta. Then the delta is an excellent productive land. So delta is an excellent productive land. So some example: Kaveri Delta, and Ganges and Mississippi. So Kaveri Delta is Tanjavur and Ganges is Uttar Pradesh and Mississippi Delta located in the United States. So it's a delta. So first distributor is nothing but a branch of the river does not return to the mainstream after leaving it. It's called distributaries. So how to create the distributaries? The river approaches the sea. The speed of the water is a decreases. So river break into the number of the branches. That is called distributaries. Next, delta. Delta is nothing but the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. A triangular tract the sediment or deposit and for in front of the river of the mouth. It's called delta. So the velocity of the water is very slow. So the river carried the materials and things and deposited in the places. The collection of the sediment from the mouth of from delta. So the delta land is a very excellent product, the cultivation land. So example, Ganges delta and Kaveri delta, then Mississippi. So the first plunge pool. So plunge pool is the bottom of the waterfall. So found is the bottom of the waterfall. And so formed by the erosion. So plunge pool formed by erosion. Next, alluvial fan or foothill. So nothing but the sediment or deposits, the clay and silt and some things. And when the river enter the plains, for is a alluvial fan. Next, meander. So meander to have a lot of curves and bend. So river enter the plains and twist and turns. Twist and the turns a large bend loops. This is called as meander. So example. So for the example, and the Velar Sethyatop in Kadalur. So the meander example and the Velar Sethyatop in the Kadalur. Next, Oxbow Lake. So Oxbow Lake is nothing but very simple. Erosion and deposition along the meander. Erosion and is a river and a meander. So erosion and deposition is the along sides. So the main river connected to this lake. So it's a abandoned place. So abandoned means abandoned place. So it is a Oxbow Lake. So river overflow. Next, the river overflows the banks and the flood and deposit the fine soil and sediment. The leads from is the flat fertile or foot vein. So the raised banks. So the raised banks is called levees. Raised banks is called levees. Next, distributaries. Distributaries is nothing but a branch of river does not return to the mainstream after leaving it. It's called distributaries. The river approach the sea or ocean. The water of the river is very decreases. So at the times the river break into the number of the branches. It's called distributaries. Next, delta. So delta is nothing but fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. A triangular is the shape of the triangular delta. A triangular tract of the sediment and deposit of the river of the mouth of the river. So the velocity of the water is very slow. It begins, the river begins and deposit the loads. So loads means clay, silt and sands. The collection of the sediment from all the mouths from the delta. So the delta land is a very excellent productive land. So the cultivation productive land. So for example, Kaveri Delta and Ganga Delta and Mississippi Deltas. Next, glacier. The glaciers are nothing but so a mass amount of covering ice is a place. It's a glacier. A large body of moving ice slowly down and a slope a valley. So due to the gravity. A large body of moving slowly down, a large body of ice moving slowly down on a slope or valley for reason due to the gravity. So two types of the glaciers. So two types of the glaciers. First one, mountain or valley glaciers and continental glaciers. So two types of glaciers, mountain or valleys. Next, continental glaciers. So first, The Continental Glacier. So what is a Continental Glacier? A continental glacier covering vast area. Vast means wide. So large area. So vast areas and large areas and thick the ice sheet. So thick the ice sheet. So continental glaciers covering a vast areas of the earth's surface, thick ice sheet. So for example, so Antarctica and Greenland. So Antarctica and Greenland. Next, the mountains or valleys glaciers. Mountains or valley glaciers. So is a stream of ice. So is a glacier, mountain glacier is a stream of ice and flowing along a river. And the glacier is used that follows the former river ways, and bounded by the steep sided. The former river course and bounded by the steep sides. So example, the mountains or valleys, glaciers examples for Himalaya and Alps. Next, the cirque. The cirque is nothing but formed by the glacial erosion. So formed by the glacial erosion. The glacial erode by the rock basin. So glacial erode by the rock basin. The steep sided wall. So the cirque have a steep sided wall and the steep head wall. So steep sided wall, steep head wall, and surrounding and armchair shape. So the cirque has a armchair shape. The surrounding has armchair shape. So for example, Corey and Carr. So Corey and Carr. Corey is a Scotland and Carr is a Germany. So glaciers, two sides of the glaciers. So first, mountain or valley glacier or continental glaciers. So continental glacier means the glaciers covering a vast areas of the ice, the thick ice sheet. So mountain glacier is a stream of ice. The stream of ice and flowing along a river, and the glacier is used to follow the former river course. The glacier is used for the former river course and bounded by the steep sided. So steep sided. So example, Himalaya and Alps. So next, cirque. The cirque is formed by a glacial eroded. And steep side wall and steep head wall. So cirque has a steep side wall, steep head wall, and surrounding an armchair shape. The cirque has an armchair shape. So for example, Corey and Carr. So Corey is Scotland and Carr is Germany. Next, terrain lag. So terrain lag is nothing but ice melt. The cirque filled with the water. Filled with the water. The ice melt and cirque filled with the water and become a beautiful lake in mountains. So became a beautiful lake in mountain. It's called terrain lake. So first ice melt. So the cirque filled with the water. It become a beautiful lake in the mountain. Next, arats. So arats is nothing but it's the same. The two edges of the cirque erode towards each other. So two edges of the cirque to erode by each others. So first, previously the cirque has a round shape. The cirque has a round shape, and next transformed change to our character. Transformed change the narrow rocky strip. So narrow rocky strip. So arad, what's in arad? So two adjacent of the cirque and erode by each other. So the previously the round is a rounded shape and transformed change to the narrow rocky strip. Next, U-shaped valley. So U-shaped valley and formed beneath the glacier. The formed beneath. So beneath means the under. So beneath the glaciers and the deepened and widened by the lateral and vertical erosion. So deepened, widened and the lateral by the vertical erosion. The material carried by the glacier. The material carried by the glaciers. And big and small sand, the big and small sand and slit gets deposited. So separated. These deposited from glacial moraines. The glacial moraines. The big and small sand and slit gets deposited. This deposit is called glacial moraines. So glaciers is two types. So mountains or valley. Next continent. So continent means a glacier. The earth covering a vast areas of thick ice sheet is called continent. Continental glacier. So example Antarctica and Greenland. And mountain valley is nothing but is a stream of ice. So mountains or valleys, glacier is stream of ice and following along the river. And the glacier usually follows former river course, and bounded steep valleys. Example Himalaya and Alps. Cirque formed a classical erosion. And the steep side wall. The cirque has a steep side wall and a steep head wall. And then the cirque look like a armchair shaped. For example, Corey and Car. So Corey in Germany, Car is Scotland. That's a Tarn Lake. So the ice melt. So glacier is the ice river. So ice melt. The filled with the cirque. The cirque filled with the water. So but then became a beautiful lake in mountain. Beautiful lake in the mountain is called Tarn Lake. This is Arad. So Arad means two adjacent of cirque erode and each others. Clashed for each others. First the round shaped and then transformed to the narrow rocky steep. Next U-shaped valley. So U-shaped valley, the formed beneath a glacier and deepened and widened by lateral and vertical erosion. The material carried by the glaciers. So what is the materials? And clay, slit and fine oil, some etc. So big and small sand and slit get deposit. This deposit from the glacial moraines. These are called glacial moraines. Next, wind. So wind, what's the wind? Wind, air that erosion and across the earth's surface. So and then another meaning is the active agent and erosion are deposited by the desert. It's called wind. And wind erodes the lower section. Wind erodes the lower section of the rocks more than upper section. So wind erodes the lower section of the rocks and more than upper section. It look like a and narrow base and wider top. So narrow base and wider tops is a mushroom shape. So mushroom shape. So erode the lower section. So wind erode the lower section and rocks of the more than upper part. So narrow base and the wider top. It's like a mushroom shape. Next, Inselberg. So Inselberg is nothing but Inselberg meaning is an isolated hill. So insulated is an isolated hill and standing like a pillar. So Inselberg is standing like a pillar and a rounded top. So Inselberg has a rounded top. So example, Kalahari Desert in South Africa. So Kalahari Desert in South Africa. So Inselberg is nothing but is an isolated hill. And the insulator has standing like a pillar and rounded top. So example, Kalahari in South Africa. Next, sand dunes. So sand dunes, when wind blows, it lifts and transports sand one place to another place. So when the wind blows, and the wind lifts and transport the sand one place to another place. And then when stop the blowing the sand and falls and gets deposited the low hills. So sometimes the wind stop the blowing and sand falls get deposited the low hills. Next, the crescent shaped sand dunes are called purgeons. Purgeons. The crescent means is nothing but it's a moon shaped. The moon shaped. The crescent shaped sand dunes are called purgeons. Next, losses. Losses is a grains of sand. So meaning is grains of sand. So very fine and light. So very fine and light. Wind carried the over very long distance. So the Lewis's travel to the very long distance. When such a sand is deposited, it's a large area. So the Lewis's covered deposit to the large areas. An example for the China, China's Lewis's. So grains of sand. So Lewis's means grains of sand. Grains of sand is very light. So very fine and light. And the wind carried the over. So the wind carried the Lewis's over very long distance. And where such a sand deposit into the long areas. An example for China's. Then the northern China loses. The deposit are brought from the Gobi Desert. So northern China loses and deposited are brought for the Gobi Desert. So the next wind. So wind is nothing but is a moving agent. So around the lower section and the rock or the upper section, narrow base. So narrow base and wider top. Narrow base and wider tops. It's like a mushroom rocks. And Enselberg meaning is the isolated hill and standing like a pillar and a top rounded top. So example Kalahari Desert. Next sand dunes. So sand dunes. So when wind blows, it lifts and transport one place to another place and stop blowing the sand and falls and gets deposited the low hills. Next the crescent shape and dunes. The crescent means is nothing but is a moon shaped. So it's called as purgeons. And Lewis's is grains of sand. So very fine and very light. So it's a carry over the very long distance. Such a sand deposits the long areas. For example, is a China's Lewis desert. And northern China Lewis's and deposit are brought from the Gobi Desert. Okay, students, and see to the next part of the next class. Thank you.